Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream, and thank you so much for tuning in for another. The United States of America recently conducted several things that indicate that they're going ahead with more escalations against other countries apart from Venezuela. They also published images and videos in the United States in an attempt to humiliate the Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Donald Trump is saying that as if the vice president belongs to him now of Venezuela, although she poured cold water on his statements after he said that they will not be colonized. Again, in the meantime, the Venezuelan army is saying that they're going to be deploying, and many people are in the streets of Venezuela rejecting these acts of aggression by the United States and the kidnapping of their president. There were more revelations coming from the Venezuelan army about the operation itself. The defense minister said included the killing of many, according to him, people or forces from the presidential guard of Nicolas Maduro. Who is Donald Trump threatening, and is he serious about these threats? Well, clearly he is. We're going to talk about that and the potential of escalation between Trump and potentially more Latin American countries. Marco Rubio, confirmed that that's part of the Western Hemisphere and that the United States controls the West. No one else. West means the United States of America. And they're threatening Greenland again. So in total, we have Colombia, Cuba, and Greenland, countries that are considered to be Western countries. Whether some of them belong to the South, of course, is a different story. But according to the United States, West is West. This is the Western Hemisphere. However, there are also things escalating very, very quickly between Israel and Iran. Benjamin Netanyahu and a senior delegation from the security and political echelons of Israel conducted meetings that lasted several hours. And the I-24 news channel in Israel said that a major event is about to break out between Israel and Iran. We're going to talk all about that and the recent reports that relate to the Rafah crossing inside of the Gaza Strip. Before we get into all of this, if you haven't done so already, please do subscribe to our recently launched platform, NewsV Pro, NVP, newsvpro.com, where you will get all of the information firsthand, verified with an independent AI verification concerning Palestine, Iran, Russia, Ukraine, the war in Venezuela. You'll have all of the details verified, 100% exactly what you need to know, without too much research being conducted from your end. We also have a designated podcast where you can choose any of the topics that you would like to know more about and pick the most interesting topics, generate podcasts at various lengths, which makes things easier for you to obtain information in a very personalized way. Now, Donald Trump and his team are threatening more countries. They have been speaking about Cuba, they've been speaking about Colombia, and they have been speaking about Greenland, and responses are coming. It's not like that there are no responses whatsoever, but the United States is serious. Firstly, let's have a look at what they shared today. This was one of the videos that they shared with Nicolas Maduro landing in New York. So as we can see, the kidnapped Venezuelan president is chained, basically, and being taken away by the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration. Why? So that they can, I don't know, pretend like it's about drugs. Trump already said it's about oil. Why are they having the DEA? Might as well have one of their oil companies' logos, taking him and making sure, that he plays ball so they can control the oil of Venezuela. That wasn't enough for them, posting the videos of him going down from the plane to New York, and Trump saying that he will feel the might of our justice system. The might of the justice system, not the justice of the justice system, the might of the justice system. Might as well have your judges, right, with hammers that smack the head of the people with, rather than the actual table, if that's your might. Or maybe give them a machine gun or something so they can start shooting people, as in the judges themselves, because of your justice system, the might of your justice, as if the United States has any respect for international law. I mean, is someone convinced that the United States administration has any sort of respect for any law? For any law, American law, international law? They're breaching their own laws. They're breaching international laws. They're threatening the ICC and the ICJ because they are saying that there's a genocide in Gaza, and they issued an arrest warrant against a child-murdering, blood-sucking war criminal called Benjamin Netanyahu. Do you think these people have any respect for any sort of law? Several senators hand-signed, sent a letter threatening the chief prosecutor of the ICC, and he got death threats, him and his family. They're sanctioning people who criticize genocide. They're threatening the ICC and the ICJ with sanctions. They've been threatening to invade The Hague since the early 2000s, after Bush invaded Iraq, just in case someone goes against the United States and any of its allies in their wonderland journey in Iraq and Afghanistan, spreading democracy and love. Is anyone convinced that they have any sort of respect for international law? That's a joke. It's a big joke. But the American administration is trying to cover it up with some sort of legitimacy, although they have no standing whatsoever. It's the rule of the jungle. That's what the United States is doing now and practicing. And they're also being very morally depraved about it. I mean, look at this video over here. In case you're wondering, that's Nicolas Maduro in one of these vehicles. Look at that. Traveling in New York. Look at that.
Good job, good job.
And you can hear some idiots chanting, USA, USA, good job, one or two people. I'm not sure if they're planted there as part of this theatrics, because there were protests amongst the American people against this. Yesterday, I posted a poll on my channel asking who is the terrorist. I simply raised the question, who is the terrorist? And this is let me show you the response. Just bear with me 1 second. Here we go. Who is the terrorist? Just a question. Nicolas Maduro or Donald Trump? 17,000 votes. A pretty fair number. Pretty fair number. 96% think that Donald Trump is the terrorist, not Nicolas Maduro. That's what many Americans believe, by the way, before the rest of the world, because it's concerning the United States of America. Yet they are now having these moves showing their moral decline. I mean, how else can you describe this but a moral decline? Parading with the man you kidnapped from another country, an independent sovereign nation. What is this exactly? But the Venezuelan people are totally for the release of Maduro. These were the streets today in Venezuela. So the people are for the release of their president. They view this as an act of kidnapping, and they're saying that he needs to be released. They're standing with their country and against this American imperialism. Now, there are a couple of things that have happened in the past 24 hours that might be confusing for some people. One of those things is the fact that Donald Trump said that he has sworn in the vice president of Venezuela, as if, you know, he is the man who put her in. Again, another play or act from Donald Trump, because he basically kidnapped Maduro, saying, okay, you're in power now. The army officially said that she is the head of the state now. She is the acting head of state. She is asking for the release of Maduro. She's also pouring cold water on the statements of Donald Trump, saying that they were not going to accept neocolonialism in Venezuela. So Trump and the American administration are trying to portray this as, that's it, game over. We took Maduro. She's the vice president due to our action. She needs to play ball. And Trump is threatening her that she knows what's going to happen to her if she doesn't do what needs to be done. And according to him, it will be worse than Maduro. And by the way, they kidnapped Maduro and his wife, for your knowledge. And they're threatening to kidnap another person now from Venezuela. One thing that is not very clear so far, the Venezuelan army said that they are deploying, and they released a very long statement earlier on talking about activating the entire space in perfect civil military police fusion, full operation readiness to ensure freedom, independence, and sovereignty of the nation. They also rejected the cowardly kidnapping of the commander-in-chief and his wife, the first lady. It's an act that was carried out after cold-bloodily murdering a large part of his security team, soldiers, and innocent civilians. That's the Venezuelan army statement. Of course, I translated some of this for you briefly. What I don't really understand, I mean, what I'm failing to kind of comprehend properly is the fact that there was no visible resistance coming from the Venezuelan army during this act of terrorism, simply terrorism and kidnapping from the United States, this act of aggression against Venezuela. Again, you can argue that the United States, you know, disabled many of their detection systems and what have you, but still there were, or there could have been more things that can be done manually to resist any sort of electronic sabotage or warfare. At the end of the day, the United States can't deactivate automatic weapons, right? Helicopters were flying at a very, very low altitude. So that's something that I'm not really convinced about. That's my opinion, and I'm not like making any judgments or what have you. But that's simply my opinion. Was there a certain treason from within, or what happened? Because I mean, it's difficult to explain. Because listen, if you are an army and a country, a sovereign country, and you have threats coming from one of your worst enemies historically, you should be on the highest alert 24/7. You should be ready. Not just the presidential security force, but also the whole country, the whole army should be ready. So what happened? I mean, how can the United States go so smoothly to Venezuela and just kidnap Nicolas Maduro like that? What was that exactly? It didn't appear very real. It looked like something was really stinking there. Something very, very fishy. I'm personally not convinced. Something is wrong here. Of course, that doesn't take away from the, awfulness of the act itself, its illegality, its criminality, that it's an act of aggression, that it's wrong. But the fact that there was like no resistance whatsoever, it does really raise a lot of questions. And I think that's something that will be clarified at later stages, especially following the statements that we should be hearing later on from this trial, this mighty trial that Donald Trump is preparing for Nicolas Maduro, and also whether things will slightly shift internally in Venezuela. Because if we're talking about a soft coup, and there were people from inside the establishment in Venezuela who agreed to it, then the United States would probably view this as a non-confrontational coup, a soft coup, where it appears to be something that it really isn't internally, only for the United States to eventually gain what it wants, which is ultimately control. Now, going to this control, can they remotely control? Donald Trump said the United States will control Venezuela. Can the United States control Venezuela? We know that the United States can have coups. They had coups not long ago against Bolivia. Dozens of coups in Latin America with drug lords, cartels, people who literally chop people up left, right, and center against democratically elected institutions. And the United States will justify it in whichever way it wants, by the way. When the Bolivian president was taken down and this woman with full of xenophobia and hate came about, and they clarified that it's about their, minerals, precious metals, and what have you. This is part of the future now. What's going to happen with everything that's required for batteries, for technology, and what have you. They don't want China to have the upper hand with all of these minerals.
They're plotting again.
What are they going to do with Venezuela in particular? At the time, Elon Musk as well with Bolivia said we will coup whoever we want, whenever we want. So there is a solid support here from the oligarchs of the United States of America for such actions, because they can benefit and profit, even if it's against the will, of course, of other nations and other people, and regardless of how many people die or get killed. Because innocent people were killed in these attacks. Reports, even in the New York Times, that 80 people were killed in total in the attacks of the United States. But again, because it's the United States, as if no human being was killed, it's as if it's absolutely normal. The fact of the matter is, a country that is ideologically in opposition to the imperialist approach of the United States, such as Venezuela, isn't going to be a soft bite for, per se, for the American administration, because of the decades of the hostilities between the two and constant aggression and coup attempts of the United States of America that were also present in other parts of Latin America as well, especially coming from the population. So the United States might have been aware of the situation, and hence why they are trying a different approach now, and they're trying to portray business as usual, perhaps internally, up until they start implementing their policies, anything to do with the financial side, the oil, of course, which is the main thing, and also curbing any sort of foreign policy that might be at opposition with the United States of America, because we know very well that Maduro and his predecessor, Hugo Chavez, were, for example, fiercely for the Palestinian cause, and they supported the people of the world from constant aggression and bullying of the United States administration and its proxies across the world. But it doesn't stop there. Marco Rubio made some interesting statements that are proving that the United States isn't only talking about Venezuela. Donald Trump spoke about Colombia, yesterday, when he spoke about Colombia, he said that they have, a lot of drugs and what have you. Again, as if the United States isn't participating in any of this. Donald Trump again spoke about Greenland, and we'll get to the response of Denmark in relation to that. But listen to what Marco Rubio had to say.
Go bonkers.
Is the Cuban government the Trump administration's next target, Mr. Secretary? Very quickly.
Well, the Cuban government is a huge problem. Yeah, the Cuban government is a huge problem. First of all,
is that a yes?
Cuba, but I don't think people fully appreciate. I think they're in a lot of trouble. Yes, I'm not going to talk to you about what our future steps are going to be in our.
I think they're in a lot of trouble, and they're not going to reveal what their next steps are going to be. So we clearly have a threat here against Cuba too. So the United States is planning to replicate these moves that they've conducted against Venezuela, at least in one additional country in Latin America. That's if they wouldn't go against Colombia too, apart from Venezuela. And then they will go with against Greenland. Greenland, that is, of course, under the authority of Denmark, or part of Denmark. So what did the Danish Prime Minister have to say? Let's listen to what she had to say.
Listen to a lot. Threats, pressure, and condescending remarks, even from our closest allies for a generation, about wanting to take over another country and another people as if it was something you could buy and own. That has no place anywhere. We shoulder our responsibility in the world, and it is not us who will seek out conflict. But let there be no doubt, no matter what happens, we will stand firm on what is right and what is wrong. Listen to a lot.
So he is going against allies, basically. Now, let's not forget how he was speaking about Canada as well, what he was talking about in relation to other allies of the United States, and even his approach with NATO, let's be frank. So the United States confirming that it's not going to stop, and that is not the end. Now, moving on to two very important subjects. But before I go to the more important and pressing and potentially like it's going to happen within days, if not hours, we don't know what's going to happen. Everything might explode between Israel and Iran within hours. Okay, we'll get to that in 1 second. Israel now is saying briefly, of course, about Gaza, because the people of Gaza, it's as if they're forgotten. These people are still suffering every single day by this constant low heat genocide being conducted and engineered with joy by this child killing, blood-sucking, barbaric, genocidal, satanic entity of Israel, backed by the United States of America and all sorts of hypocrite establishments all across the world, from the West and the East. They are still committing crimes every single day. And one of these crimes was the killing of 3 people in southern Gaza. 3 were martyred following Zionist attacks. However, now Israel is saying that they actually are having a preliminary decision to open the Rafah crossing both ways. There were some assumptions that Netanyahu might have told Donald Trump, we'll go into phase 2 in Gaza so long as you okay the attack on Iran. Because Trump knows how much damage the genocide in Gaza caused to him personally. This supposedly anti-war president committing the worst crimes on earth by supporting a genocidal entity and bragging about it and being owned and controlled by the Zionists in the United States of America. That's an assumption, not confirmed. We can't verify it, but that's an assumption. However, Israel is now saying that it actually might happen. We have a preliminary decision, just awaiting the political decision. Therefore, they might actually go ahead with it. which will be in line with the reports that they will be rebuilding Rafah first, to this green zone that they're talking about, and then potentially opening the Rafah crossing too. According to the reports, a Palestinian delegation that belongs to the Palestinian Authority heard that when they were in Cairo. They were in Cairo and they were speaking with Egyptian officials who gave them that feedback from Israel. That is on the Palestinian side. Now, moving on to the pressing, the most important thing that may happen that will potentially reshape the region of West Asia for the future as a whole, or for eternity maybe, a very large war between Israel and Iran. The terrorist prime minister of the genocidal state, Benjamin Netanyahu, had hours of consultations throughout the evening with security and political officials that relate to Iran and a potential attack against Iran. These were very, very long and thorough consultations, which resemble the previous consultations that were there before the 12-day war. There were also some hints happening from another genocidal, depraved maniac, the previous Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, who posted this video on social media with a sand clock. With the music too, as if, you know, time is running out. So we have a meeting, we have hints as well, something is about to happen. What else happened? The Israeli channel I-24 News said that a major event between Israel and Iran is coming soon, and it could be coming very, very soon. That is another indication that the war between Israel and Iran is about to happen at any given moment. What is Iran doing in the meantime? Well, yesterday we spoke about the fact that the previous CIA director confirmed that the Mossad is actually participating in these protests in Iran. They're trying to destabilize Iran from within and portray themselves as the saviors later on, who are going to come and rescue the Iranian people. Thankfully, many of the Iranians are aware of that. But Iran now has been conducting missile launches on the borders with Iraq and all across of the other parts of Iran. These were some of the videos that were published from the borders between Iran and Iraq earlier on. Missile launches, Iran testing new missiles as well. And the fact that they're trying them, or they're being viewed from the Iraqi borders, indicates that Iran is activating the Western Front very heavily. The Israeli attacks against Iran during the 12-day war were primarily focused on the western part of Iran. Why? Because Iran would be able to launch shorter range missiles from West Iran, because Iran is vast, it's very big, and they would be able to reach Israel. Therefore, Israel concentrated its attacks on all of these areas, thinking from a strategic perspective too, that the majority of the Iranian missiles are going to be positioned in the western part of Iran rather than the eastern part, because again, they're going to be having to use very advanced missile, longer range missiles as well against Israel. Of course, they're more costly, they're heavier, and from an Israeli perspective, of course, they wanted to have this priority by targeting the western parts of Iran. They also were conducting tests of their air defense systems. So these were also images and videos published in Iran testing its air defense capabilities. Again, we saw similar videos coming from Iran during the 12-day war between the two countries. So what do we have here? Well, we have a very serious situation, and that situation is Netanyahu is having a very thorough meeting throughout the evening, security consultations, several hours, discussions focused primarily on Iran. I-24 in Israel reports that a major event is about to break out between Israel and Iran, signaling that something might happen imminently. The United States is clearly on a rampage, the Wild West all over again all across the world. Netanyahu and the Israeli government are maximizing on this American muscle flexing and capitalizing on it, not only by having control over it, but also trying to take advantage of it from an Israeli perspective in what they describe as a window of opportunity that might not always be repeated, that Israel has at the moment, whether when it comes to the genocide and ethnic cleansing attempt in Gaza, that's still taking place. Let's not forget that they are having this agreement with Somaliland because there were reports that Somaliland agreed to accept 1.5 million Palestinians, and they're talking about making Gaza 100% Jewish. Then their plans for the West Bank too, their attacks against Lebanon, against Syria, against everyone in the region, threatening the whole world as well, anyone who opposes them, boasting about being able to silence and control people who criticize them online, on social media, on mainstream media. So there's a momentum, and that momentum is a genocidal momentum backed by American militaristic oligarchy that is like a loose rabid dog all across the world. So the way Israel is seeing it, listen, the message that America is sending is now, they're giving an example to everyone. So Israel is saying, firstly, Netanyahu congratulated Donald Trump. He said that they welcome this attack against Venezuela in a very, very blatant way. As a matter of fact, he made a video statement about this. This was the video statement of Netanyahu.
לגבי ונצואלה, אני רוצה להביע את תמיכת הממשלה כולה בהחלטה הנחושה והפעולה הנחושה של ארצות הברית להחזיר חירות וצדק גם לאזור הזה של העולם. אני חייב להגיד שבכלל באמריקה הלטינית כרגע יש מהפך שאנחנו רואים אותו בכמה וכמה מדינות שחוזרות לציר האמריקני ולא במפתיע גם לקשר עם מדינת ישראל. אנחנו מברכים על כך, אנחנו מברכים את הנשיא טראמפ על החלטתו, גם מצדיעים לכוחות הצבא האמריקנים שביצעו מבצע מושלם. אנחנו יודעים להעריך דבר כזה.
So he again related the attack congratulated this terror operation of the United States against Maduro and linked it to Israel. Yesterday we were speaking about the link of Israel and the fact that this opposition thing said that she will be having the embassy moving to Jerusalem, according to her. Venezuelan, the one who got a Nobel Peace Prize for what, I don't know. Clearly he is saying that and how it's linked to Israel too. But the reason I showed you this is not only to show Israel's position, again, a position that we spoke about, but rather to highlight how he is giving an example. Donald Trump is giving an example to Israel and everyone else that it's fine to go and occupy another country, conduct illegal operations against international law anywhere you like, so long as it serves your interest. And even if your interests are purely financial, purely energy related, purely precious metal related, purely from a banking system's perspective, whatever reason that you like, it's fine to do that. But it's a double-edged sword. Well, Putin is looking too. What is anyone going to say, by the way, if tomorrow Putin decided to go to Ukraine and kidnap Zelensky to Moscow and say, hold on a second. He would have far more backing than Donald Trump in relation to Venezuela, because that's purely oil related. From a Russian-Ukrainian perspective, you're talking about a real national threat, an existential threat, hundreds of kilometers and a very, very long border. So he's given an example to the whole world. It's fine to go and do that. Instead of saying that, no, we need reason and we need to end wars, he's igniting wars. He said that he's going to finish wars. He's igniting wars. And he is potentially, by the way, igniting wars that may lead to much more casualties than what we have seen so far, by the way. Whether Israel's terrorism in Iran, or even if it goes to a greater scale. What do I mean by a greater scale? Well, okay, if Israel goes to Iran, assuming they succeed, I highly doubt so. I think they're going to get a huge beating. I think they're going to get the beating of their life. Who's next? Listen to this minister. Well, I won't show you the whole video. I'll just show you a clip. An Israeli minister, a Netanyahu ally, he recently called Turkey an enemy state. That's an official tied with Netanyahu, Israeli government, calling Turkey an enemy state. Saying that someone is an enemy is justifying an upcoming attack against them. That's why Turkey has been building bunkers that they're almost done with, developing ballistic missiles, everything to do with their Navy fleet, this drone aircraft carrier, and their fighter jets, everything to do with their country for foreign escalation. Because Israel is saying that now. So the plan is not going to stop there. Every time they have something else, Gaza one day, then the West Bank, then Lebanon, then Syria, then Jordan, then Egypt, then Yemen, then Saudi Arabia. They already spoke about Saudi Arabia, by the way. Then Iran, and then they're going to go to Turkey, and then they're going to go to China, maybe. They'll tell you China was promised to us 7,000 years ago by the Lord of the Rings. That's where things are going. And that's all being enabled by the American administration. That is all being enabled by the United States administration that is practicing this. So that they're not just preaching it, they're practicing what they preach. Interventionism and war. The absolute exact opposite of what Donald Trump wanted. And now, with this recent threat that's coming from Israel and the recent reports that a major event is about to break out between Israel and Iran is imminent, it is definitely closer than ever. And that was it for this live stream. I'll open the space up for some community participation. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in for another live stream. And welcome, everyone, to another show. I'll give you some time to start posting the questions in the live chat, if you wouldn't mind highlighting them, again, in accordance to our moderator's instructions over here, and we will be back with you in approximately 30 seconds. Thank you so much again, everyone, for tuning in for another live stream. We'll go to the chat section now and share some of your comments and questions as well. Has America evacuated bases in the region? I heard several days back a report that I couldn't confirm, by the way, that they evacuated the embassy in Iraq, but there was no like confirmation. It was like a couple of reports on social media that weren't really mentioned anywhere else, unlike before the 12-day war, when America actually confirmed, and Trump himself said that they are removing delegations from the region. This time they could be operating slightly differently to give Israel more of a surprise element with this attack, but they would have to, in case they are willing to participate. They wouldn't necessarily remove everything, or, you know, take all of their forces out if they're not planning to participate. Which is one reason why they might be saying that, you know, we're engaged with Venezuela now. However, if they would participate with Israel, that they're gonna have to evacuate, because there will be no more bases remaining in West Asia if the United States fully participates in an attack against Iran. There are thousands of missiles already directed at these bases that the United States is unable to reach or touch. Big worm, Lebanon next or before Iran? That is more up to Israel than the United States. The freedom of movement in Lebanon. Look, the report said Donald Trump told Netanyahu, give us a bit more time, because the deadline ended to disarm the Lebanese resistance with the entry of 2026. The deadline ended on the 31st of December, 2025. So for Israel now sees it as, that's it, we have a chance to go and attack. And they threatened with it. Trump told them, no, give me some time to try and fix things. It hasn't been fixed yet. So they could be attacking Lebanon, but I think this time they would probably start with Iran, especially seeing as Iran, or the attack on Iran and the window of attack on Iran is more important strategically for Israel than Lebanon, because Iran supports the Lebanese resistance. And Israel doesn't want to be in a situation in the future where they're like not getting the okay or the approval of the United States to attack Iran, because they've been asking every American president for the past 3 decades, at least 2 decades, to attack Iran, and they didn't get the approval. But now they're seeing an administration that is willing to play ball. They're probably using the Epstein files to the high heavens, or the high hells, or the low hells, and maximizing it as much as possible. So I think they would prioritize attacking Iran before Lebanon. Because Lebanon, they would be able to attack them kind of as and when. This is how it works, you know. Some countries, Israel can attack them whenever they want, you know. It's not a problem. Because they have, you know, the backing and the approval. But Iran is a bigger threat, because there's a risk for the world. It's not just about Israel. It's not just about America. It's about the whole world. It's a very, very strategic place. Sigriyo Mahmoud, which countries do you think will come to assist Iran if the US, Israel attack them? I think Iran is already getting assistance from China and Russia and from other countries too. But that doesn't mean they would necessarily go and participate with them if Israel starts to attack them. So they would see how long it takes. Like last time, it ended in 12 days. The 2 attacks before that, you can call them skirmishes. So bigger players like China and Russia wouldn't necessarily start sending, forces to fight all of a sudden unless something big. However, if we're talking about ground invasion, troops, a full occupation of Iran, then neighboring countries should be concerned, and also Russia and China should be concerned, because Iran is a pillar in the region. They are the biggest oil exporter to China, and now if the United States fully controls Venezuela, that's it, that has oil dealings with Russia and China, they would be able to use that as leverage. And if they go to Iran, they would be choking them even further. And China wouldn't necessarily like that. Primarily China, but also Russia. From a Russian perspective, Iranian support has been pivotal and very crucial for them for the past several years. Royal in Mount, do you think Venezuela is planning a true promise-like operation against the US as a response? If so, where? I don't think so, no. As a matter of fact, the whole thing is underwhelming and surprising and dubious. A lot of things were ambiguous in this whole procedure, especially the lack of response. As in there was no response. Smooth operation. It was very smooth, and smooth operations always raise eyebrows. Oh, what happened on the other side? So they don't have the capabilities as well. Venezuela is incomparable to Iran, but their air defense systems are handheld SAM 7s. That's nothing. Compared to more advanced missile system, anti-air air defense systems, or missile system there. So I don't think so. It doesn't look like it. I mean, their president was kidnapped, and there was no resistance. There are a lot of questions there. I surely don't think there's any true promise coming from Venezuela. It would really depend on the current serving people, the deputy who's now an acting president, how the country is holds its grip together, and how the authorities also portray what's happening with the people in case they're in it, just in case they're in it, because that's also a possibility. Who do you think next after Venezuela? Cuba? Well, they said Cuba, and they mentioned Colombia. They did not speak about Nicaragua, but about also, but potentially about other countries too, and they spoke about Greenland. About reinforcing West Hemisphere, US losing in the Middle East. They are losing. They know they're eventually, Israel is going to be done. It's going to be over. This apartheid project is going to be done. And they want to, of course, have control in the Western Hemisphere more. Yeah. But again, instead of having a diplomatic approach about it, they go and conduct international terrorism to do so, instead of actually engaging in diplomacy. Because Maduro himself was telling them, I'm willing to talk to you. I'm willing to have, back and forth. But they didn't want to speak with him about that. Skibi, thank you, Mahmoud. What about a quick false flag by the Mossad and Satan like NYC blaming Iran starting the war? Well, Trump himself was already playing on this Iran thing by somehow involving Iran in the assassination attempt against him. How and where did he get that from? Go figure. So Trump is playing ball with Israel 100% with that. Israel might do that. It would be fully coordinated with the authorities in the United States and the biggest bodies in the United States. And some people will buy it, maybe, but I'm pretty certain that the majority of people won't buy it, because every false flag is being spoken about heavily now. All across the United States, everyone is talking about previous Israeli attacks against U.S. forces, false flags, questioning 9/11, and everything, questioning history altogether. So another false flag now, I'm not sure how convincing that would be. 10 years ago, maybe, but not now. Now it's very difficult. But that doesn't mean they wouldn't necessarily try it, to try and drag, of course, the US. What they're wary of, however, is that there are certain elements within the government that might get some information out. Like, I heard a report on social media that a guy called Hakeem Jeffries, I'm not sure if he's a senator or a congressman, was planning to tip Maduro off. I heard that. Again, no, it's not confirmed, but I heard that. And the reason I'm saying that is that there is a sentiment among some people within the establishment that it's not necessarily supportive of the approach of Donald Trump and his administration. Like, listen to Thomas Massie, for example. Listen to Thomas Massie and what he had to say today.
If it were about drugs, we'd bomb Mexico or China or Colombia, and the president would not have pardoned Juan Orlando Hernandez. This is about oil and regime change. If it were about drugs,
So they know the score, and not everyone is playing ball with the Trump administration. So anything to do with a false flag operation is going to be very high risk and potentially very low reward. As a matter of fact, it might flip the opposite side. Do you think, Dino, do you think that the US could attack NATO member, and by doing that open doors to China and Russia for attack on US NATO is the first line of defense for the US? No, I don't think they will, personally. I don't think they will attack a NATO member. That doesn't mean they wouldn't threaten or, forcefully conduct certain things to get their benefits or to get their goals or whatever it is they want, by the way, because not all NATO members are the same. And Trump has previously shown hostility to the NATO. And in the greater scheme of things, even if the United States might show an understanding, for example, with Russia, or have, back and forth, they would still view them as a strategic adversary. Because listen, based on the foreign policy of the United States, they want to control Russia as a country, and they want to occupy it. They want to instill a puppet regime, like they're doing all across the world, to control it. But I don't think it would lead them to directly conduct an attack against a NATO member, because I don't necessarily think they need to do that to get what they want, if that makes sense. And Lovatar, you also, another question about evacuating. Again, I heard reports online. They weren't really verified or confirmed. I hope Iran watches for color revolution. They are. And the supreme leader spoke about the right of the Iranian people to protest, but that there is no point talking to rioters, who were exposed heavily, by the way, by protesters themselves, and also by none other than Mike Pompeo yesterday, who said that he sends his wishes for the new year for the Mossad agents operating with the Iranian protesters. They're exposing themselves outright. I mean, it's ridiculous. So the Iranians are aware. Key in any Russian or Chinese technology was lost in the invasion. We are not aware of any of that, to be honest with you. And another thing, they were not heavily armed, Venezuela. They were not heavily armed whatsoever. They hardly have anything to do with the Navy, hardly anything to do with missiles or air defense or anything. And again, because it's there's a tender approach there between both China and Russia and the United States with arming or interfering as well. And I hope that also clarifies a previous question that I got. Because if they would do that, they would risk escalating, support of the United States of America, for example, for Taiwan or any other hostile countries or countries that may be hostile, to China in Asia and in Southeast Asia in particular. And they wouldn't want to risk that, but they would rather have a soft approach with them. Again, whether you agree with that or not, of course. Gullyberg, Mahmoud, the government here in Iceland has hinted that we will see an increased American military presence here in Iceland. That's not great news. I mean, they're already all across the world, and that's the last thing that we need. I love you, Mahmoud from Iran. I love you, my friend, and all of the brave and noble Iranian people and every free person in the world. Thank you so much for that. And we hope that Iran emerges even more powerful than before. Wavy, do you think China will reunify with Tehran this year, 2027? Salam. Eventually, it's going to happen. I mean, it's just a matter of time. I just think that the Chinese authorities are calculating everything to do with their influence there before it becomes inevitable. Firstly, they have the constant soft approach, which is politically implementing the things that they want. For now, they're treating it as a part of China, but almost kind of almost not there yet. One country, two systems, where similar to Hong Kong, for example, and Macau. But in Taiwan, they are managing to have more influence internally. And some people are complaining about that in Taiwan. And also China is showing its military power outside of Taiwan with constant drills and showing its military might and power and threatening every country that comes close to Taiwan. Like a couple of days ago, I spoke about this visit that took place between a senior Taiwanese official and Israel, because Israel was already participating in a project called the Taiwanese, or labeled as the Taiwanese Iron Dome, and China was very concerned about that. So China sent a message to Israel, a warning, basically, that we know what you're doing, because this was leaked in Israel, and the Israelis said that we are helping them militarily. Imagine how much problems this little tiny entity causes, of course with the blessing of the United States to a large extent, but not always. So I think it's inevitably going to happen. However, not necessarily in the form of aggression, because listen, you need to understand that China doesn't really isn't like a country that goes out on a military campaign like very quickly. They don't do that. They don't do that. And a big part of their military progress and advancement is to deter the United States from attacking them. Like Pete Hegseth confirmed not long ago that China can destroy all of their aircraft carriers within 20 minutes. Diana, Trump claims to have been angry about to find out about the 2 assassination attempts on Putin's life, and then said that now is not the time. What do you think the president is possibly in on it? Well, I mean, let's rewind slightly back to 2016. If you recall, there was a lot of talk at the time that Trump was compromised by Russia because there was blackmailing material obtained by Russia against Trump when Trump was there, way before he became president. And he was more friendly to Putin, which raised more suspicion. Zelensky is not necessarily happy with Trump and his approach. As a matter of fact, now that Donald Trump went on this operation in Venezuela, Zelensky hinted that, okay, well, it's possible here with Putin too. A Zionist genocide supporting Zelensky, who drags Ukrainians to death when he could have had an agreement with Putin 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But then he started to have whispers in his ears by the British Prime Minister at the time and the Biden administration. No, go, we'll support you. And we know the level of corruption in Ukrainian politics. That doesn't mean that, of course, Donald Trump would oppose taking down Putin if it serves him and if it goes smoothly. Not that any such thing would go smoothly, because Russia isn't just about Putin, of course. But so far, he's trying to portray himself, and with the actions that he's doing, as a man who has leverage on both sides. But again, the statements that are coming from Ukraine, especially Zelensky, are not in favor of what Trump is doing, and the criticism too. And also, from a Russian perspective, they still have an open door policy, as in they always welcome talks with the United States. And there was a delegation in Moscow not long ago. Okay, let's just take a couple of last questions with the time that we have left. So I have a few. I'll just take one more before we wrap up. Bujar, Netanyahu is betting on Israel's survival on lesser than 1% chance of success. They're going to be evaporated instantly alongside all of the US trace of existence in the region and beyond. I think they are delusional, and that they are thinking that they are actually going to expand, by the way, because when you reach that level of arrogance and you become drunk with this power trip, you think that you can control the whole world. But what you're saying is actually closer to reality than what they might think, even if it's not necessarily like today or tomorrow. Let's not forget that many dramatic things can happen very quickly, especially nowadays. And from an Israeli perspective, however, they are trying to take as much advantage as possible with this administration that has been the most Zionist supporting administration in a very, very long time, by the way. And whether that has to do anything with the blackmailing of Israel against Donald Trump directly, or anything to do with his administration and the people he appointed who are so close to Israel and the decision-making scene in America, in the administration, whatever it is, they have given Israel, listen, all American administrations gave Israel a green light to kill and slaughter people. But the amount this guy is given, but both him and Biden, really, in the past 2 years, but now Trump, because it's more far-reaching, by the way. And Trump not only allowed him to attack Iran, he allowed him to wage a long war on Iran, and he also participated with him. Unlike Joe Biden, that's the same peace man, right? So they are on a mission. They are on a mission. There are several countries who are aware, you know, of what they're going to do. Others are asleep, not really realizing that the turn might be against them. But now the most pressing thing is what they're doing with Iran, because that can be imminent, as in you can wake up tomorrow and hear something happen between them and Iran, and all of a sudden you are in either True Promise 4, or I don't know, maybe Iran will call it True Promise, the Final Promise, or something like that. We'll wrap it up here, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in for another live stream, and thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Thank you for everyone who participated in the chat, and for your comments and all of the questions. In the meantime, we'll hopefully have more videos for you and live streams in the next coming days as usual. In the meantime, everyone, stay blessed, take care, and I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone. Salam.